Honey, what time did you feed the mogwai? The Gremlins movie was a hoot for the time. It featured adorable little furry creatures called mogwai that turned into murder-crazed demons if you fed them after midnight. The film centered around Christmas but released in the summer, somehow dodging the Halloween season altogether. The Gremlins movie was more comedy than horror, although the Gremlins, which the mogwai turned into if certain rules weren't followed, did freak me out as a kid. Fast forward 6 years to 1990 and a new batch of Gremlins were ready to go, and that's today's game, Gremlins 2: The New Batch. The movie continued the story of the first, but was a little sillier, more cartoon-like, and not quite as popular as the first, so let's see what's up with this one on the NES.
Beware. Something exciting is coming to video games. Gremlins 2, The New Batch, the video game from Sunsoft. Help Gizmo battle the menacing Gremlins. But it won't be easy. Because this game has awesome graphics that seem to come alive on the screen. Gremlins 2, The New Batch from Sunsoft. Don't say we didn't warn you.
Gizmo is captured by a geneticist and, through some strange series of circumstances, his old pal, Billy Peltzer, is able to locate him and save him. He hides him in a desk and tells him not to go anywhere until he returns, but Gizmo isn't great at listening to directions and goes on an adventure. As you control Gizmo, starting in Billy's office, you get a top-down view, you're armed with infinite tomatoes, and you can jump. To start, the game is pretty simple. Jump over obstacles, fire some tomatoes at the enemies in your path, and collect the crystals they leave behind. The crystals are currency, so when you come to a door, which are usually located about midway through each level, you can enter Mr. Wing's shop. In terms of continuity, Mr. Wing is supposed to be dead, I think, but nevertheless, you can at least buy items from his ghost. You start with 3 hearts, which seems pretty generous at first, as, like I said, the game is fairly simple to start. Because this is a top-down platformer where you're relying on shadows and mid-air maneuvering for landing very picky jumps, you'll fall into the dark abyss quite a bit. Sometimes, depending on your hearts and lives, this can be a bonus, as you are rescued by a helium-filled balloon that lets you zip ahead through the level for a few seconds, so long as you're able to land on a safe spot when the balloon goes away. And if you get to Mr. Wing's shop with enough crystals, you can buy a potion to refill your hearts, get an extra heart altogether, buy a new balloon if you used yours already, or get an extra gizmo. The shop seems to rotate the items it has available, so don't have your heart set on one in particular. Once you get out of Billy's office, there are 4 more levels to survive. In the second, Gizmo is confined to the air duct system. In the third and fourth, he's running wild in the genetics lab, and in the fifth, he's in the control center with the goal of taking it over. All the while, Gizmo is greeted by a wide array of enemies, not just Gremlins. Although there's plenty of those, including ones with propellers who fly around, some on skateboards, and others that just belch acid. There's also spiders, bats, and hands that come up out of nowhere. But the enemies are at least third on the list of things to worry yourself with in this one, as the plentiful obstacles and gravity matched with the top-down perspective is really the problem causer in later levels. The game ramps up the difficulty on the 4th level, and they don't skimp on the bosses here. You'll have to deal with an electrified gremlin who tries to fry you, the Mohawk gremlin who's trying to shoot you with a machine gun, and that same gremlin transformed into a giant, terrifying spider. These boss battles can be pretty tough, and the penalty for failing to beat the boss is having to start the previous level all over again, which can be a real kick in the teeth near the end of the game. I should point out that you can get new weapons and upgrades too. At some point you can get a crossbow, and you can get power-ups to shoot in multiple directions, which comes in very handy with some of the bosses. There's also a password system here, so if you need to take a break to come back to it later, you can do that. All in all, Gremlins 2 is a decent time. If it comes easy to you, it will be a rather short experience with just 10 stages spread across 5 levels and 4 bosses. If you have trouble with the top-down platforming and get stuck on the bosses with low-grade weapons, you might be in for a less fun experience. It looks pretty good, with the boss fights especially doing a great job of making the Gremlins appear extra menacing. The music and sound design is pretty great too, with some high-tempo spook tunes. If you can't get enough Gremlins, there's a Game Boy version of this one that's a side-scroller. It's an entirely different game, as you can see, and reviews pretty well, with the main complaint being that the difficulty is fairly stiff. There's even a couple DOS versions that were notoriously poor received. One is a side-scroller that at least looks nice despite being ridiculously tough to play, and the other is a top-down escort mission that's at least playable, but super boring. Well, that does it for Gremlins 2 on the NES. Keep your mogwais dry, and thanks for watching.